Is there another question for Dory? That side of the room? Yes, please. You've got a mic right behind you. Introduce yourself and then your question, please.
My name is Kaishi. I'm asking this question because I think in the process of reinvention, you keep creating new identities, but how do you maintain like a consistent message? Because I think that, let's say, you know, you can switch careers or you can switch interests, but others might think that you're a scatterbrain and you can't make up your mind. So I think in some ways, I understand where you're coming from for the reinvention, but the thing is that how do you ensure, you know, you still have this constant or consistent thread throughout that people have the confidence when they look at you despite all your reinventions?
Yeah, thank you. That's an important question, and in fact, in my book, I actually have a section about this because it is important not to reinvent yourself in such a way that people think you're a big phony because, oh, well, she just keeps changing. That's not good. So the way that I would answer that is that essentially we need to think of our professional lives like a Venn diagram. If you guys remember this from, from geometry, a Venn diagram is the name that they have for the circle, where it's the two circles overlapping, and they have this little area in the middle, right? And that's where they overlap. And so what I would suggest to people is that you can't. It's not successful. It's not wise to jump entirely from one circle to the other circle. It often reads as being too dramatic to people, and they won't understand why or how you're doing it. They may say, wait a minute, you know, this doesn't make any sense. You're not even qualified for that. But so if you, however, can be moving incrementally in the direction of where you want to go, that does make sense for people, particularly if you're able to create a narrative that they can really grasp. And so I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you want to go from being a tennis pro to, let's say you were great, you played tennis, this was your great passion, and you do this for years, and you get to be 40 years old, and all of a sudden you blow out your knee. You can't be a tennis pro anymore. What do? You say, okay, I'm going to be a business person. Well, that's great. You probably don't have a ton of business experience if you've just been a tennis pro. And so what is the logical thing to do? If your ultimate goal is you want to be a high-level corporate executive, the first place you want to go is to try to get a job at a sporting goods company. Because you may not have the corporate experience to tout, but you can say, look, I don't have that, but what I do have is far more valuable. Everyone else here in this organization has an MBA. They've trained. They know that stuff. But I've been on the ground. I've been using your products. I know your customers. I know what the market terrain is. I have a unique perspective that can get me in here. And so that's something that you hear it and you say, oh, I buy that. Okay, and so that person becomes a sporting good industry executive. If they like that, fantastic. They can stay there. If they don't like that, let's say they want to move into entertainment, they are then able to make the jump into the next circle because after a couple of years working as a sporting goods executive, they now have the business skills where they can say, oh, well, I know about marketing, I know about finance and operations, and so let me bring that to the next realm. So it's if you went from tennis pro to entertainment industry executive, it wouldn't really be believable initially. You probably wouldn't get that far. But if you make the jump incrementally, you have a lot more leverage behind you. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think the element of the common thread that underlies and is a coherent thread at that, I think is very, and how do you spin that narrative when you're talking to people is very important, because at the end of the day, people want to know what your story is. And then how did you come to be where you've come to be? And I do wish sometime that that the women leaders would argue for their strengths as much as they sometimes argue for their weaknesses. So that was an interesting example.